You're listening to the Reds Podcast.
This is episode 7, and we'll be continuing our Quit Your Job stories. This time with mine, we'll be talking about what happened before I quit my job, what led up to it, the moment I quit my job, because that was not very pretty, and then what happened immediately after. Was it as easy as I thought it would be? That's coming up on this episode of Red Podcast.
This is the Red Podcast. Real entrepreneur development. Make more money, work less, and live a life of freedom. No BS advice that really works. Here's your hosts, David Hooper and Laurel Staples.
David, do you think you could ever go back and work another day job again? Are you thoroughly unemployable?
You know, I don't know, because, and I'm sure we'll get into it later on in this episode, just the various jobs I had didn't really give me the freedom that I wanted, and I think now my skill set is such that I can go in and pretty much call the shots and make my own rules. So maybe, but
I don't think jobs want you to make your own rules.
Yeah,
I'm just
I haven't done
throw
it
that
for a
out
while. Yeah, I think it could be a conflict. I mean, I know that there are a lot of things that if I were being paid for that I wouldn't do, but when I'm not being paid for and when I have ownership of them, I'll work all night because I like to have skin in the game. That's what excites me.
I think you told me the other day, though, you're like, I think I've gotten to the point where, if I really had to work a job, if everything went to hell, I could do it. I don't know. I don't think you could.
I don't know, but I think what I meant by that was I think I've done enough yoga and breathing exercises to be able to reduce my blood pressure and heart rate to where that it would be physically possible. I don't know if I'd like it mentally very much.
Yeah, I don't know. Knowing you,
I got
I
violent
don't know.
at the last job I had.
Let's talk about that. Because you're not a violent guy.
No,
you're
that's how
very peaceful yoga man.
That's how stretched thin I was. Yeah.
Wow. So I know that you had 26 jobs before you quit for good. Is that true?
Yeah. Well, that is true, but that's going way back. You know, that's jobs during college and jobs that I was probably, working part-time, not like a full-time career. But I had several, certainly, when I was trying to establish my company and get things rolling. The quickest job I ever had, I worked for 2 hours once.
What job was that?
I just walked out. Well, that's a longer story that maybe we should get in. But I was living in Mississippi, and I'd just gotten down there, and I'd moved down from Memphis, and it was there was no. I just wasn't set up to do what I wanted to do there, and I got a job washing dishes, and I was like, this sucks. And
you don't wash our dishes, so.
Yeah, it sucked, man. I'm not good at it, and I had a big commercial dishwasher there, and I walked out. Yeah.
Oh. Well, in the last episode, you interviewed me about quitting my day job that I quit 7 years ago now, and so this is my chance to interview you about quitting your day job and going full-time with your business, because you quit. What was the year you finally quit and never went back?
Well, I had a job for 4 days in 1999.
And that was your last job?
Yeah, so I'm gonna talk about that one. What it took me to get there, though, was I had quit actually several times, but I kept getting nervous.
What do you mean nervous? You kept getting nervous?
Well, here's what had happened. I was moving around after school, and I'd been up in Columbus, Ohio, and I was doing my music thing. I was doing it successfully, but sometimes I would get nervous and I would go get a job just because I wanted extra money. So I decided I was going to move to Nashville, and I bought a house down here. Bought a house without actually even going into it. My parents are in Nashville as well, so go over there and check that house out, see if you think it's great. Yeah, it's pretty good. So I bought a place sight unseen, and it was good. It was great for me. But that was my biggest purchase at the time, and I was really, really nervous about it. You sign these contracts, and it's a 30-year mortgage, and you owe, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I was like, man, I just don't know if I can do it. I just kind of flipped out, and I got scared. So I went to work for a company that I had had some experience with previously, sort of. I mean, something in the industry. And I remember I had to go, it was in a skyscraper. I remember I would go, there was a parking garage. It was 9 floors down under a big, tall skyscraper.
That's like hell.
It
like
was
Dante's
hell because,
Inferno.
yeah, you would have like a sunny day, and you would go in there, and then it was all of a sudden like dark and fluorescent lighting, and it's damp, and it was bad. And I remember getting on the elevator from the parking garage, and those doors closed, and I just heard the sound of like a jail cell in my head. It's like, and I was like, I have made a terrible mistake. So anyway, bottom line is on the 5th day I went in there, and I was running late, and I just didn't want to be there. And the elevator doors closed, and I heard my jail cell, and I went to my desk, and somebody had moved my chair. And
like your office chair?
yeah, somebody had moved my chair. I guess they needed it for something. And I was like, where's my chair? And somebody said, well, Catherine moved it. And Catherine was one of my coworkers. And I was like, well, whatever. I was running late. I was feeling bad about being there already. And I was just like, all right, I just got to cool down. I went to the water cooler to get me some water. And as I turned the corner, I bumped right into Catherine. And I was pissed. And I literally I lost it on her, man. I lost it.
Not enough yoga at that time.
No. Well, I'd started yoga. I'd started it, but I was very new to the process at that time. I was probably, maybe a year into it. But that's how stressed out I was. All the yoga in the world, I don't know, would have helped me. I was not happy. And I understand that when people are working jobs they're miserable at. I was just not wanting to be there.
Okay, so you turn the corner. So Catherine's there. You lost it.
Catherine's there, and
mean?
I lost it. And I didn't really. When I say I lost it, I'm not really sure what happened because I wasn't getting really violent, but I was certainly raising my voice. And keep in mind that as I mentioned, I'd come down from Ohio, and in Ohio, people talk to people differently than they talk to people in the South. So I was probably pretty aggressive.
What do you mean? What do they do in Ohio that they don't do?
Well, you know how it is in Nashville. We're like, oh, bless your heart, and then we'll.
That's a stereotype.
Yeah, no, it's true. We'll turn around and talk about you behind your back.
Yeah, we do that.
Yeah, it's like you go to church and they're all gossiping about you, and it's like, oh boy. So in
you're
Ohio,
saying in Ohio they're just like face to face.
Yeah, if they don't like you, they're going to tell you.
Ah.
So I kind of came down there. I'd been up there for a few years and came back down to Nashville because I was originally from here. And I was a little more rough around the edges, maybe. Anyway, one of the administrative people, one of the secretaries or whatever she was, she freaked out and she called the cops. She called the building security.
Were you yelling at this lady?
No, we got into it. I said, why did you move my chair? She's like, it's not your chair. And we didn't like each other. So anyway.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So. And keep in mind that I'd done this not really quite 26 times. That's all the jobs I'd had or been fired from, but several times because I was frustrated with myself because I would start a job and I would say, what am I doing? I'm already making money. Then I would quit. And then I would get nervous when the money got a little bit low, wasn't really able to weather that out like I should have been. Then I would go get another job. Then I would be frustrated. So it was a cycle, right? Anyway, I don't remember what exactly happened, but somebody kind of, corralled us off the main floor and said, look, you guys just gotta work this out. And we were in there with some other higher up, and I'm talking, and everything was cool. It was like, hey, it's just a misunderstanding, but somebody had called the big boss in, and she comes in, she goes, what the hell is going on here? And I was like, uh-oh. And we looked at each other, Catherine and I did. We were like, well, now we're really in trouble. And she said, Catherine, out of here. I want to talk to David. And I had kind of connected with the boss. I had a lot in common with her. Keep in mind, this is in Nashville. Her husband was he was a well-known session player, we'll say. He was a well-known touring bass player, and he had played with a lot of stuff that, he played on a lot of albums, that's what I mean, a lot of songs that I had, and I was familiar with his work. And she sat down, and basically what happened was she listened to me, and she said, listen to me. I knew when you walked in here that you weren't made for this. And I know how tough it is because of my husband. And he had something very similar. And there becomes a time when you've got to just walk away from this. It works for some people, it works for me, but it's not working for you. It didn't work for him. I've seen that it can turn out positively. And I think that this is an opportunity for you. And I started bawling. All of a sudden, I was going to kick Catherine's ass. And then the next thing you know, I'm just crying, and I'm hugging the boss.
It's awkward.
It was weird, but it was so refreshing to find somebody who understood me and who believed that there was something different for me, because I had never experienced that before. I was just like kind of that guy that didn't fit in, right? Mm-hmm. And she said, look, you've been here. This is your 5th day. You haven't even started.
Yeah.
And you don't have any kind of time here where I can give you a day off. You need to make a decision. You can go back out there and you can finish out the day, or you can move forward. And, I'll give you a minute to make that decision. And I kind of knew what I needed to do, because I had made like a big disturbance on the floor, and I'm sure everybody outside was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Everybody was watching it. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, where everybody's watching you. And I was like, I can either go out there with my tail between my legs and be, I'd probably just be so pissed I would do something like this again. Or what I can do is I can get my stuff, and I can trust that this time it's for real, and I can walk out of this building with some kind of dignity.
What'd you do?
Well, I wrote a note right there. I said, she helped me to I guess author it. Thank you for the opportunity. I am immediately resigning this position right now. And she told me, she said this, you can't get back on here for another year. But after a year, I guess there is some kind of waiting period where they just don't want to flip-flop people. You could reapply if you ever wanted to come back. But I knew I wasn't going to go back.
How did you know you were never going to go back at that point? Because you had been in and out of jobs.
I didn't think that. Well, I knew I was never going to go back there. I didn't know what was going to happen. But I was already up and running something. I felt like I was always strapped for cash. I was putting every single bit of money that I had into what I wanted to do. So it wasn't that I wasn't necessarily making money. I guess I started out as like a part-time thing, but I just knew. I guess I just had this internal belief. I said, listen, if you don't make this work, you could very well be here like some of these other people are for 15, 20 years. Those people that just hate their job and they're always bitching about it. If you don't make the move now, and if worse comes to worse, you just sell the house. If worse comes to worse, you sell the car. If worse comes to worse, you eat ramen noodles, you move in with your parents, you do. I just knew that I wasn't going to be able to do it. So,
well, let's talk about this, because you already had your business set up, right?
Well, I had it set up, but it wasn't necessarily the successful thing that I wanted. So let me get to that point, and I'll tell you what happened afterwards. So I wrote the note, I handed it to her, and again, this time, we're crying. I'm like, oh my God, this is. But she was like, all right, get your game face on. So she was gonna just really protect me. She watched over me. So I walked out of there, and I was basically like, and we're keeping this podcast clean. So I'm gonna say what I said in different words. And I walked out of there with my coworkers, and I was like, fudge this place. I can't stand it. No way in hell am I staying here. And then I packed up my desk, right? I put everything in a box, and I didn't have much because I'd only been there a few days, and I walked out.
See, you had a Jerry Maguire moment.
I wanted people to think that, right? I was going to walk out of there with some dignity. So I did that, and I went back to that parking garage 9 floors down, and I remember coming out of it where you could see the light of day creeping through the exit exit, where you drive your car up to. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, oh